a 2.5% or a 3.75% rate increase. And they asked to see what the, how that would impact the customer, you know, each different customer class. So I prepared those numbers and sent them to Susie for distribution. I'm sure you had a chance to look at them. And then I've also have the impact summarized on the narrative that you have before you today. So the difference in revenue between a 2.5% and a 3.75% rate increase is about $10,000. You can, like I said, you can see the impact on each of our 4 customer classes spelled out on the narrative. As we've discussed, we're dealing with high uncertainty. So flexibility this year is going to be key. Once July and August pass, we're going to have a much better idea as to how flexible we need to be going forward. And we'll also need to assess if further mid-year expenditure reductions have to take place. So the narrative summarizes the changes that we've discussed the past 2 budget work sessions. The only difference with the budget that you see today is I've added 2 columns reflecting the 2 proposed rate increases. And we've also had an adjustment made to the benefit line as the town has decided to utilize their premium stabilization account that they hold with the trust, which has reduced the overall cost of health benefits for fiscal year 21. So I'm happy to go through, you know, the ins and outs of each line again, or take any questions. You guys tell me what you would like.
Well,
do you want me to go over the signals?
No, okay. I mean, unless somebody else thinks that we ought to go line by line, I personally do not. But I'm just one person. Anybody else think that we would like to hear a line by line discussion, or do you want to just discuss the she's got some highlights attachment. I don't know. I'm okay with the way it's set. Although I after comments, I would like to make a proposal that we adopt a 3.75% increase.
I have a question.
Sure.
With this, the one that I'm looking at, the draft, it shows that we do not have any contribution to reserve. How much do we have?
Talking about?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, we're actually taking from reserves significantly this year.
Right. So how much are we going to have? What document shows me how much we have left?
That's going to be, I think that's a later agenda item, but I actually had it listed out in the narrative. So depending on the rate increase.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's actually an important thing to mention because it is a significant amount we're taking from reserves this year, over 300% more than what we took in the prior year. And so combined with where we're at now and what this budget is looking at, by the end of fiscal year 21, we're looking at an approximate target reserve level of like 85 or 86% of where we should be. And I can go over more of the numbers when we have the reserve agenda item.
Okay.
That's actually not so bad. I mean, that's better than we thought. Yes, or am I missing something?
It's not horrible. We were at 98% as usually the document I would present you with during this budget session would only reflect our numbers as of the end of fiscal year 19. And at the end of fiscal year 19, we were at 98% of our target reserve. So we were in a really good place. And so it's, you know, it's just, we're not as good of a place as we were. And thank God we have those reserves to draw on at this point when we really need them.
Sure. Well,
we just want to replenish.
I will tell you, I'm a little more optimistic than I was in the last meeting as to.
Me too.
And but I mean, I don't know if it's going to last, but as it looks right now, I'm a little more optimistic.
Yes, I agree.
Well, any other questions in regards to the sewer budget?
I'll just
Well, I'd
state
like to
one, sorry, just going to touch on one more thing. I'm sorry to interrupt, Pete.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to, we hadn't really talked much about the service building apartment budget. That's the last segment on page 3. And I just wanted to mention that our reserves for the apartments will be at 39,000. So anything that we end up needing to improve or replace there, that's where that money is going to come from. So we're safe there.
You mean on the apartment building, right? Because that's where that money has to be spent.
Exactly. Yeah. It stays there. It's reserved for that only.
I have
Dylan.
one more question.
Mm-hmm.
The last time, I know that there was a meter, the meter wasn't working. I know Amy was going to look at that, but that $6,900 for boat pump out, did anybody ever get a chance to look at that number?
I haven't had a chance yet, Sandra.
Okay.
So Dylan, you're familiar with that building. You don't have any, you're not thinking we've got to do on that building this year, do you think?
No, there's some small replacements that need to be done. One of the apartments needs a new faucet, nothing major. There is a window that I'd like to have replaced. The stairs need work, but we're not looking at that this year or the coming fiscal year.
I mean, we have $39,000 in our reserve account. I would like, we shouldn't let maintenance get ahead of us. If we need to spend some money on that building, we seem to have it available.
I have had 2 contractors come and look at work there, so I do have work. I have irons in the fire, so to speak.
I believe you.
Yes.
Good.
Yep.
Any other questions from anybody else on the sewer budget?
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the budget as is with a 3.75% rate increase.
Do we, oh, hold on one second. We have Brad coming in.
I'm sorry?
We have Brad coming in right now, so I'm just gonna let him in on this.
Hello?
Hi, Brad. Pete, do you wanna repeat your motion for Brad so he can hear it?
Well, so Brad, so far we had a couple of questions. Mona has a sheet that was part of your pack. I don't know if you've had a chance to review it or not. But the question at first was whether or not we would like Mona to go through line item by line item, and I felt that was necessary. Sandra had a couple of questions that were, I guess, asked, and finance hasn't had a chance to go look at the meter from the boat pump out. And but other than that, there's a motion on the floor as it stands to adopt the existing budget with a 3.75% increase, and that motion was made by me.
Okay, what was the increase? I'm sorry, my audio's a little on the low side right now.
3.75% versus, and Mona provided numbers with the 2.5% and the 3.75% increase.
Okay, because I sent through a proposal that we split the difference on it. I'm just thinking that this year, Pete, I can tell you personally, I'm spending.
Oh, we did split this. Splitting the difference was 3.75%. That's how we got there.
Okay, because what were you looking for, 5%?
5, yes, sir.
Okay, because I'm just telling you right now, if every business out here, I don't know about people, but every business out here, I'm personally spending money I don't have just to get open, and I'm not even open yet. So every dollar right now is counting for everything right now, and I got to think it's probably the same way with everyone else. I don't know.
It is.
You're right,
This is-
yes.
Yes, we're all feeling that.
I have a question, which I just noticed now. I'm sorry to be at the bus budget, but there's not much difference between 2.50 and 3.75.
No, there's not.
Right,
That's
about 10,000.
and per user, it's a pretty insignificant difference.
Well, actually, unless I'm transposing the numbers and I'm not seeing it right, 2.50 lands at 1392531, and 3.75 lands at 1392530, $1 less.
Sandra, I'm sorry, this is Brad. My only point is that for most places out here, anything is too much right now.
Oh, I agree.
So, I mean, that's why I'm going for, honestly, I realize we got to do something, but that's why I'm pushing for, honestly, as little as possible right now.
I mean, if you look at the consumer price index, that's at like 2.3 right now. So we're actually beyond the CPI.
Yeah. And Sandra, the difference in the totals that you're looking at is because it's a difference of what's being taken from reserves to
Okay.
fund the budget.
Oh, I got it. I see it now.
Yes.
I knew I was missing.
And you know, there's one other thing. Well, I was missing something too, because I wanted to say that we have an agenda item coming up on, let's see here, the agenda item number 6. And I'm just wondering if that might impact what we're looking at here for the parking revenue.
Well, so on the parking revenue side, David says it's okay to talk about it. I got a text from Ned Phillips at 4:03 this afternoon, and he is going to pay his rent. And the only thing he's asking is that next year we do not bump his rent.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry,
So
who
no
is that
significant
from,
change
Pete?
there.
I'm sorry,
Who was that from?
Ned Phillips.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, he's pretty happy with his spot up there, and you know he's got a spot to put his equipment, and so it works out pretty well for him. So he's planning on making his rental payments per the letter, and which I will print off and obviously submit it to so that it's in the records. And he's planning on making his rental payments as promised, and only ask that next year we do not pose an increase.
I'm fine with that.
Oh, me too.
Fair.
Yep, me too.
We need to make a motion to that effect, I would imagine, don't we?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. So my thoughts is I don't think we can vote on that right now, because unless David says that you guys can take my word for it.
So David here, what I would say is, so when we get to that agenda item later on, you know, we can talk about it a little bit more, but there won't be any motion necessary at that point, other than we've got time to, you know, if we need to amend that lease to allow that, or, you know, we want to go forward with that proposal or not. That's where we would talk about it, but nothing would be finalized. I don't know if for the budget, I can't remember exactly when the increase kicks in, what month, if it affects the 21 aspect of the budget
No,
that's being
this
talked
right
about
here is
right
based
now.
on what, no, yeah, as long as nothing changes compared to what he was paying, then everything's fine here.
Okay, that was my question. Was whether or not the increase was part of this budget that's being approved on the revenue side.
No, I don't believe it was.
Okay, so we're
I
good
don't
for
believe
now.
Yeah.
I think pretty good shape. So let's see here. Let me double check before we get carried away here. Let's see, August 1st. I will pay the rent regardless. It's the stretch. I appreciate you letting me lease a lot from you. I only request that when you are able to draw up another lease, that you hold the lease amount this year and not raise it further. I also would request at least a 3-year, if not a 5-year lease renewal.
So it must be
The
doing
old
pretty well
price?
for him, I would imagine.
Wait, but he wants it to be renewed at the old lease rate?
Well, next year is the only thing he asked about. When you draw
Do you
up,
have to,
you hold the lease amount to this year and not raise it further.
So there could be an increase in 2022, or?
No, I think what he's asking for us is to hold the rent stable for 3 years, if not 5. That's how I read it.
that's crazy.
Well, I would certainly agree to the 1 year or 2 years if including this year, but not beyond that. But by the sounds of what he's requesting, that's not really what he's requesting. A lease renewal is very different from, no one's expecting a lease renewal to be the same terms long-term, I would think. And that's something that's totally separate from holding it for a year.
I got it, but he's I don't blame him for asking.
I don't
All
either.
right. David here. So just to try to keep the agenda in some kind of order. So we've got the answer as far as, this agenda item in terms of trying to put forth a budget for next year's budget. That, as we just were able to confirm, doesn't affect what we're potentially putting in front of the electors in a couple of weeks.
Okay,
So let's wait till we get to the other kind of mechanics of how we renew or amend, or how we're going to do that lease when we get to that a little bit later on in the agenda, just to keep everybody on the agenda we got.
Well, anyway, so the motion on the table is for a 3.75% increase in our rate for the budget to be presented to the town.
Do we have a second for that motion?
Looks like no
Is
second.
everyone's audio breaking up the way mine is? This is Brad.
Oh,
No.
Steve Draper, I'll second that.
Mine's okay.
Mine's okay.
It's
So
okay.
Mine's
Motion's
okay.
made.
Steve just seconded it.
Yep.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Susie, can you please do a roll call on this?
Yes. Brad Martins, I don't think he can hear right now. Brad,
This
do
is
you?
Brad, you're breaking up. Do everyone else first if you would. I'm trying to change my connection here.
Sure. Tom Doyle? Sandra?
No,
Diane?
Aye.
Steve?
All right,
Kathy?
No,
Was that no, Kathy?
yeah, that's a no.
Okay, thank you. And Pete?
Yeah.
Can you
Okay,
hear me
Brad,
now?
I can hear you now, Brad.
Well, we got too many people voting.
I'm a nay as well.
There's
I'm
too
fine
many
for
people voting.
2.5.
There's too many people voting.
Yeah,
many
that
people
was
voted.
6 people.
Oh, okay. Oh, I forgot we have everyone on.
So the
of the
decision
voting,
needs to be made who is,
of the voting members, Susie, how did it pan out? Sandra's a nay. Sandra's a nay. Brad's a nay. I'm a yay. Steve's a yay. Who is Tom? Tom didn't vote.
No, Tom is a yay. His audio is just off, but I saw him.
So Tom's a yay. So the motion carries 3-2.
No, and I'm a no.
So how do we?
I was a yay.
Diane was a yay.
I was a.
Kathy's a
Yep.
no. So I don't know who gets the vote. I think the board. So who are the alternates that voted?
Sandra and myself.
All
Sandra,
right,
Diane.
so
David, would that go by seniority of the alternates, or how would that go?
You have a
No,
first
no,
alternate and second alternate, but you have 5 board members. So you
got
don't
5
need any
board
of the
members. We
alternates.
I don't need
no-
any
no-
of the alternates. So yeah, the
So-
motion
so-
carries.
Yeah, the motion carried 3-2.
Susie, just so the record is clear for everybody, can you just announce what the vote was, who voted which way for the final 5, so to speak?
Yep. Pete McNerney was a yay. Brad Martins was a nay. Steve Draper was a yay. Kathy Zabel was a nay, and Tom Doyle was a yay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Let's see. Item 2 is the water budget. Oh, so we're all set now. We're going to present that at the annual meeting on July 6th, correct?
That's correct.
Is that what we're, okay. So let's go to the water and discussion of potential action regarding the adoption of the fiscal year 2021 water district budget. Questions,
All right.
additions, let Mona talk to us.
Well,
Okay, so this is the same budget that we were looking at in the last work session, with the exception of 2 things. We have a final number for the truck financing agreement. It's going to be 5 years at approximately $8,367 each year. So we've replaced that number. And then also the same thing on the benefit line. We're going to see a reduction there based on the town using their stabilization fund. And so what you're looking at is a 12.5% increase on both the usage fee and the monthly customer charge. And a majority of that is just to fund help fund the large water main project that is forthcoming.
okay.
Again, I have laid out in the narrative how that rate increase is going to impact the customer on an annual basis within each customer class. These are based on kind of average usage within each class. We're using numbers and flow that is reduced by 50% for the summertime. So again, flexibility is key here. We're going to know a lot more after August has passed as to if we need to rein it in further or if we're going to have more flexibility going forward.
All right.
I have a question. The way I hate to do this, but so item 7 has to do with this letter that we got from the health department at the water. Is that going to affect? And this question is for John. Is that going to affect John in terms of overall budget for you? I mean, or I guess I know it's putting the cart before the horse, but I just want to know how this affects our overall stance in terms of budget and if we're going to have to rectify this for the health department or you've got this sorted out.
What? So you're asking what the letter from the health department has to do with the budget?
Well, in the long term, yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. Then so you're okay with that letter. We're all set with that.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with the budget.
Well, okay, you say so.
Maybe I'm a little confused. How are you tying the letter from the health department to a dollar amount? I'm just confused. Maybe I'm not seeing something.
Well, maybe I'm not seeing something, but the way I see it is that letter the way I only gave it a quick perusal. I didn't read it but they're questioning. They could cost us a lot of money if we have to do stuff in order to pressurize our system. So I see that
the letter has to do with item number 7, and I don't think it has a fiscal impact whatsoever.
Okay, well then that's question answered. Then I'd like to make a motion that we present the water budget as written.
I'll second that motion. This is Brad.
All those in favor?
Tom Doyle, Kathy Zabo,
Aye.
Steve Draper,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
and Pete.
Aye.
David, do we have to open a public hearing here? How's this going?
So,
I
David here. So everyone who's here is either staff or commission members. There is the Times. I guess we could have asked if there's any comment from the Times, but other than that, there's no public to seek comment from.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're going by the book, and that usually even if there isn't public, we'll open a public hearing and close a public hearing for the record.
Did we not open a public hearing at the beginning of this for this
No,
particular portion?
no.
I'm sorry, I wasn't here. This is Brad, so. I
Yeah,
thought that
I
was
mean,
standard procedure for anything having to do with the budget approval.
I can't speak to what we've done every time in the past. I just know, generally speaking, as long as it's announced as it's a public hearing on the agenda, that suffices.
Okay, that's fine by me. I was just making sure, David, that's all.
Yeah, I believe we may have in the past in other instances gone through a more formal open and closing the public hearing. It doesn't, it's not a legal necessity. It's more of a formality that some like to follow.
Okay, thanks, David.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we move into the joint sewer and water district monthly meeting now.
Second.
All in favor?
Tom Doyle, Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabo,
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
and
Aye.
Brad. And Brad.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Cool. All right. Well, item 3, moving right along here. Discussion of potential action regarding approval of the minutes of May 18th, 2020. Any omissions, subtractions, thoughts?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for May 18th, 2020 for the budget monthly, or for the meeting and work session.
I second that.
All in favor, Tom Doyle, Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabo.
Susie, I wasn't here. Can I vote on this?
No, I will have you as abstain. Pete
Okay.
Aye.
and Brad.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And now for the May 26th budget and work session number 2.
Second. Brad.
All in favor, Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabo,
Abstain.
Sam's not here. Diane Hayes
Aye.
and Pete McNerney. Brad Martins.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item 4, discussion of the time and determining the time, place, manner, and logistics to conduct fiscal year 2021 annual financial meeting. I don't know who wants to handle that. But is the financial meeting going to be handled the same way that all the meetings have been handled, via Zoom?
Does Amy or David want to take that?
Dave, this is Brad. David, what are the ramifications of that?
So, first off, right now, there is not a provision to have a virtual financial meeting. Now, so the town's FTMs, financial town meetings, and your equivalent, the annual financial meeting, there is not an adequate ability to do that and not inadvertently disenfranchise someone. So the better practice, and the governor has now given us clearance for this, they've actually removed the cap on gatherings for financial meetings only. And I believe the reopening RI packet, so to speak, for governmental entities was part of your digital packet, if I recall, that allows for this. And while it is encouraged to be outdoors, if it cannot be held outdoors and it has to be held indoors, the only capacity requirement is that it's 25% of the building's rated, fire rated capacity. So now it's a matter of, it seems to be, it's page 14 of the last digital packet. You still have to allow for, essentially 150 square feet per person is if it's indoors. So, Amy, I don't know if you want to pipe in. I know you've been part of the discussions from a statewide level as well. Probably helped craft this, if I'm going to guess. And so I'd like to turn it over to you.
Sure. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't think about where to hold the sewer water meeting, but I certainly can, unless somebody has already been through that exercise.
We applied to use the gym at the school. I'm just waiting to hear back. Yep.
Great. And that's what the town is planning for as well. I don't think you'll need the overflow capacity that we're going to prepare for. So I think the gym is the right place, and we should fit everyone easily. So
I agree.
My recollection is you're having to call people to get to the quorum number. So
we'll get there.
Which is 7 in your case.
David, do we need a motion to date, and or do you want a motion on this or not?
I would prefer a motion, but I don't know is there a possibility that we get turned down on the use of the gym? John, you might have some inside knowledge on this. I don't know, but
I think we're all right,
All right. So I mean, that's my only concern is if there's a risk of not being able to use the school gym. I actually ran into this in one of my other communities where the school department and the town were at loggerheads and they wouldn't let them use the school building. So it's going outdoors anyway.
I don't know that we can make a motion on that. At least not until we get some kind of affirmative or negative on this. I mean, do we have to do this like now, or
we do, because we need 3 weeks to post.
David, just as a point of practice, the town traditionally posts its meetings, which are held at the school, as at the Block Island School without specifying a room. That also gives you the flexibility of the cafeteria, which again, I think would work for these purposes. We'll do the math and double check as a backup. But just saying Block Island School is the location.
So I was actually going to make the suggestion we keep it general to the property. So in case we want to hold it outdoors, we can't, right? Like they don't let us, I don't know. Again, I'm playing out worst case scenario. They don't let us in the building. They can't deny us necessarily using the grounds, or at least let's stick with that, right? But yeah, we can use the front lawn or whatever field in the back or something. I don't know. That gives us that flexibility. So yeah, leaving it to the school, generally defining it would probably be better. Just give us as much flexibility as possible.
So I guess that goes to your motion, Brad. So make your motion that says that we can use the whole property, I guess.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we hold the annual budget meeting on the school property on the agreed upon date for, I believe it's July 6th.
That's correct.
2020.
I will second that motion. Susie?
Amy's raising her hand.
Amy, did you have a comment?
I have a question. Have we set a time?
Yes, 4 o'clock.
Thank you.
I will amend the motion to include 4 o'clock.
All
I'll
right.
second it.
All in favor, Tom Doyle,
He's saying aye.
Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabo,
Aye.
Pete McNerney.
Aye.
Brad Martins.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're gonna move right on to the sewer. Discussion of potential action regarding sewer district reserve policy. I guess that would be Amy.
I can talk.
I'm actually
If
going
you
to
don't mind, Amy? Okay. You can chime in with any comments, okay? So we've got this reserve policy, and every year at this time, the commission reviews and adopts this policy. You may remember last year that the sewer commission voted to increase the target levels of the capital replacement reserves by 5% in preparation for the pump station and force main upgrades. And each year at this time, I usually present you with the reserve balance and target levels as of the most recent fiscal year that has ended. So at the end of fiscal year 2019, and we already touched on this earlier during the budget discussion, the sewer commission was at 98% of their target reserve level, which is a wonderful accomplishment. And we would be remiss, however, if we did not look forward at the projected reserves given the impact COVID may have on the economy. So the expectation is that the commission will need to draw from reserves more than what was budgeted for fiscal year 2020 due to the reduction in third quarter revenues. And in addition, depending on the rate increase, which we decided was the 3.75, the fiscal year 21 budget will require over $300,000 from reserves to fund the operating and capital budget. So this will leave the sewer commission at roughly 85 to 86% of their target reserve levels. And we've got this worksheet here, which lays out where we were at 6/30/19. And then the summary below just touches on what I just reviewed.
I'll make a motion that we amend the sewer district reserve policy as needed and as discussed due to the current COVID situation.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call, all in favor, Tom Doyle, Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabo,
Aye.
Pete McNerney,
Aye.
and Brad Martins.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, item 6, sorry. Discussion of potential action regarding a letter dated May 1st, 2020, received from Ned Phillips concerning the parking lot lease agreement. Well, we've already sort of talked about it. His renewal is at the end of this year. Am I correct?
I've got the lease in front of me. So what I'm seeing is that it was written in January 1st, 2017 for a period of 3 years.
Yeah.
And then at that time, it could be extended for an additional 2 years at the option of both parties at a rent amount to be agreed upon in writing prior to December 31st, 2019. So we're a little behind in that agreement, but it sounds like that's what the commission is agreeing to do anyways, is to continue with the current rent, which is $20,500 per year.
Well, yeah, but I had the sentiment that we don't want to continue that for an additional 3 or 5 years with no rent increase.
Right.
So David Petrarca here. So because neither party acted prior to December 2019 to extend the lease any additional years beyond this, coming year, like it covered this upcoming summer and whatnot. It would be a new lease regardless going forward, for starting with the next fiscal year.
Perfect.
Okay, so I guess the question is what's everybody's appetite for renewing this lease, for having, if we do a 3-year lease, having this year to stay stable with the current rate, and providing some kind of increase for the second and third year.
I've got a question. This is Brad.
Sure.
The current lease, if I'm not mistaken, expires the middle of this year, 2020. So the extension that's in the current lease is an option of 2 years. So if we agree to extend the current lease for the same rate for the remainder of this year and offer him, as requested, a 1-year extension, would that not be implementing the current lease's option on 2 years? And then we can discuss furthering it later without having to go into big, discussions at this point, because there's already a clause in there allowing us to renew it currently for 2 years, which would be covered by keeping the rate the same for the what he's committed to now and for the year following, correct?
I just think he's asking us to nail it down for him, and I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
It isn't, but it's not on the budget. We'd have to enter all new discussions, and we can do what he's already requesting, and then we can move forward with possibly changing the agreement of the lease after we get through all of this current year and the hassles, and then discuss whether we want to go further than the additional 2 years, which can be done at any point during those 2 years.
So what Brad said, that David here, so what Brad says is correct. You could just do it for these 2 years, acting as if they were the option
Having
years.
to enter into big negotiations with and extend this thing out a whole lot further. We can just move forward with it the way he's requesting it, and we can simply say that we will happily enter into looking at options of 3 to 5 years once we get through the current pandemic situation.
Okay, along those lines, then I'd like to agree with that, and I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter to Ned that expresses exactly that, Brad.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we take his current lease, allow him to extend it the option of 2 years, and the requested rate will stay the same for the current year, and we agree to maintain that rate for the second year and then we'll open up discussions later with the possibility of other extensions.
David, did you have a comment?
So I have no problem with the motion. I'll wait for someone to second it.
Do we have a second? Yes.
Well, I second it.
So what I would say is it would have to be exactly what Pete was saying in terms of, sending a letter expressing this interest. If that's something he's agreeable to, it would still come back to the commission to approve, an extension document, usually a 1-page thing. So, because that is not on the agenda, we're reacting to his letter and I guess his further correspondence via text today, which, is in relation to that letter. But it's not about the agenda item isn't broad enough to allow you to, exercise that option today. You can respond, and then we can tee this up for next month, is what I would say.
I think that's what we're doing.
Yep. I just wanted to be clear for the record. That's all, Pete.
All right. So the motion was set and seconded. All those in favor, Tom Doyle?
You saying aye?
Steve Draper?
Aye.
Kathy Zabo?
Aye.
Pete McNerney?
Aye.
And Brad Martins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Nice. All right, let's see, moving right along here. Let's see what we got. Sorry about that. My thing went blank here. Anyway, discussion of potential action regarding authority of the sewer district to shut down water supplied by the water district to the entire town in the event of a wastewater overflow or wastewater related emergency. So this only happened once since I've sat on this commission, but when I was, I don't remember exactly years ago, but it was right about the 4th of July, and we had a power issue or a lightning strike. We were probably within 5 or 8 minutes of water flowing in the street at whatever rate it goes into the old harbor of OA1 pump station. Couldn't get a hold of our company manager to make the final decision. There was going to be poop in the streets, let's put it that way, and until they got it fixed. So my point in this whole thing is, and we don't talk about it and decide it today, but food for thought is we need to have some kind of written policy for emergency situations such as this, and I don't know where that authority lies, to be with you. I don't know if it lies at the town manager's feet, but I was going to do what was necessary to keep poop from being in the streets, and because it happened once, and it was not a pretty thing, and they shut the harbor down, and if we had a spill right there, I don't know what they would have to do, but I tell you, it was not a pretty thing, and the health department was involved, the DEM was involved, and I can't tell you how many meetings I had to attend, the Shellfish Commission and the town manager and everybody else. And so we need a policy, and we need to start thinking about how if it should ever happen again. Now that has happened once, we have belt, suspenders, alarms, internal policies to keep that from happening again, and not to mention generator hookups, so forth and so on. The odds of it happening are certainly reduced, but it could happen again. Our manholes are not alarmed, and because it would require, they're just not, is the bottom line. But in terms of pump station trouble, we have every available backup to keep that from happening. But it was a touch and go situation, to say the very least. And it was on a Friday night. I couldn't use the town manager, and at the end result was I spoke to her about an hour later, and she said, "Hey, you have the authority to pull the trigger." And no, and there needs to be a policy, and needs to be accepted across the board.
Well,
Okay.
I would like to.
John, do you want to address this?
Do I want to speak?
Conversations with the DOH.
Yeah, there's two things in your packet. One came late, and I apologize. The engineer who wrote it wanted to put it by the director of drinking water quality. You also have a memo from me, which speaks for itself. Both memos do not recommend this kind of action for a sewer overflow. And mainly it's because positive pressure of a water distribution system is what keeps contaminants out. And DOH has a number of policies in place in the rules and regulations that would send me into a place where the sewer would be with an overflow. And I guess my major point is that shutting down the water mains doesn't solve your sewer overflow. It might help a little bit, Let's take the example of OA2. If I shut off a large portion of the water distribution system, you still have a lot of flow coming in there from large businesses on their own private wells. So you're not solving the problem. What you're doing is you're creating a second crisis for the water company. We're talking boil water notices, chlorination, which is 24 hours, chlorination, which is wasting a ton of water in the middle of summer, let's say, because that's when this is going to happen. And then they indicated in their letter, it's 3 consecutive days of negative bacterial tests, which I have to get from numerous places around my distribution system. All in all, I think if this were to happen, this would take 7 to 10 days to clear a boil water notice. And there's no guarantees if there's, if there's any contamination. In my book of water distribution, in my training, the only reason you dewater a water distribution system would be for a main break or to isolate a main break, or if you are cutting into a new main for a large construction project, and that is done under a controlled situation. I believe, I was thinking about it as you were talking, I believe the last time that any large portion was watered and it was done under a controlled situation was in 2004 when they had to switch over the water main downtown during that major project. Just to give you an example, I do not think this is a good idea. In fact, I think it kind of goes against what Department of Health is doing. It would certainly go against any of my training. I want to leave with, and I'll be quiet after this. Dylan and I have spoke about this, and we reaffirmed, and in my letter, or in my memo, I'm sorry, we reaffirmed that if either company is in a situation where we need resources, that to make sure that we know that we're there for each other. We both have small crews, and there are situations that have arisen in the past. I was, for the last sewer overflow a long time ago, I was there helping along with Collins and Dave Simmons. And we will be doing that again if it ever happens again. And, I don't think I don't want to make this as, John Brunig won't do something. This is, I want to help solve the problem with Dylan, whether that's doing anything of directing traffic to maybe actually laying hose or sitting by a generator, whatever it needs to do. Dylan and I have reaffirmed to each other, hey, if you need human resources, we're here for you. So I don't want to make this, I'm not being obstinate.
That's not the way it's taken.
No, I know. I'm just painting the picture of, we've reaffirmed, hey, Dylan's here into the job, and I just wanted to make sure he knew that I was there for him. That's all.
So let me paint a different picture. So I was there also, and happened to be a lot of people walking down the street, and they were walking through sewage, and because they didn't know what it was, or they didn't care, or I have no idea what the reasons could possibly be for it, along with bicycles going through raw sewage.
I remember.
And if there was a spill at OA1, not OA2, it would have been worse in terms of, and certainly in terms of environmental damage. And you want to talk about having to test and so forth and so on.
A boil water notice, Peter?
Depending
for 10 days?
Depending on how much sewage went overboard at that particular area, I would wonder what the repercussions of that would have been, and I don't know that anybody would have predicted it, and not you or anybody else. And it would, and I don't think there would have been a boil water because it's at that particular spot mandated because of a sewage overflow and shutting the water down.
If I dewater a large portion of my system, I have to do this.
Wait a minute, that's not dewatering it. I'm just saying shut it off so people can't flush the toilets. I don't know that that's water.
A dewatering is indicated, I'm reading from the regulation, as no water or a trickle of water at fixtures. So that you dewater when you shut off your main and then people flush toilets, you're dewatered at that point.
I got it.
Okay,
Got it.
I just wanted to make sure you understood.
Well, anyway, the point is I still think there needs to be a policy put in place. And regardless of your thoughts or mine, because I'm not sure either one of them is right or wrong, and they may be both right, or they may be both wrong, or maybe you're right and I'm wrong. But I still think there needs to be a policy that's in right, regardless.
I concur. I just don't think shutting down the water main should be a part of that policy. That's all.
Well, I think it's the only way I know to stop sewer flowing at a busy time of year is stop the source.
So who's going to deal with the boil water notice? We're talking
I'm telling you,
unbelievable amount of resources that I will need to solve my issue now. Wouldn't you want to get the sewage moving? Isn't that solving the problem? I'm just a small Band-Aid, shutting down the water mains is a very small Band-Aid.
Hey,
I would like to
John,
interject.
I just want a policy. I didn't say that what you would need for resources or what I would need for resources to clean it up or how many trucks it would have to be here to clean it up and what we would have to do that. It would be a catastrophic situation. All I'm suggesting is that we need a policy and we need the buy-in of whoever needs to make this decision. And I'm not sure that you or I are the ones to make it. That's all I'm saying. Sure.
What I'd like to say, you're using the word policy, maybe it should be protocol, and I don't know that that's correct. I don't know that it's you or John. Of course, John would have a lot to say in the matter, but wouldn't the engineers be the person to come up with a protocol on how to deal with something like this?
Okay, this is Brad, and I'm only going to jump in here because my understanding from the DOH, and John, you can correct me, we just need to keep it short, but DOH said they basically said, no, this is not something that can be done according to their policies and procedures. Is that correct or not correct?
I don't think they said it can't be done.
John?
Basically, she's outlining, hey, the way I read this in summary is, hey, this isn't a good idea, and just to let you know, here's the regulation. If you have to, just be aware this is what you have to do, and you're under a boil water notice. I mean, the ending says the RODOH would also like to point out, in an event of a sewer emergency, shutting down the drinking water system is putting the water system at an increased risk of bacterial contamination. Keeping the pipes flowing full with a minimum of 20 psi will lessen, if not eliminate, the possibility of the wastewater entering the water pipes through any cracks and loose fittings. So, like I said, positive pressure is what keeps contaminants out. She's pointing out, hey, maybe this is the last point in time that you want to do this. I didn't even think about that because you have sewer in the soil matrix potentially.
Sure.
So I didn't even think about that. That was, but that's another interesting thing. The other thing that I wrote in my, is the fire protection would be lost as well, which is concerning to me. And I believe anyone with a fire system might have to get a watch on, depending on how long the water's out. That's just another consideration that we have to think about here.
Well, I got that. Being a fireman, I believe me, I gave that a lot of thought too. But versus having sewage flowing in the street freely, I don't know.
I mean, Peter, that stinks too. But I mean, there's been large sewage spills recently into the Narragansett Bay. I didn't hear anything about the water system, shutting down a public water supply. for it. That's all.
It's apples.
I don't know if it's a known practice. I haven't found it to be a practice that happens when there's sewer overflows. Water mains break. We have to dewater sometimes. Sewer things break, and we have to react to them. I would rather solve the problem.
Apples and oranges, John.
So
Narragansett Bay is not here.
no, I understand that. I'm looking for other places where there's been large sewer overflows. We're also talking about millions of gallons, not.
That's exactly right.
Okay, this is Brad. This is Brad. I'm going to make a suggestion, since there seem to be multiple points of view on this, that we table this for further discussion and get further rundown from the Department of Health, that this would be an absolute last resort measure because it would not be recommended to dewater and depressurize the system, and having a private well, I know the hassles of something like that, which is major. So I'll just make a motion. We table this for further discussion in the future with further clarification from the Department of Health.
Well, I think, Brad, the problem is they wrote me a letter. I don't know what else they're going to say. You know, do you want to hear from the director herself, or, you know, I'm unclear on this. They wrote me a memo.
Well, you got a memo. I was under the impression they said this is something that was not advised and was not something that was suggested at all, which to me means no, simply because, and if I'm not mistaken, they, from what I understand, laughed at you saying that this was not a suggestion. So I'd like to speak to someone further on that, maybe in person, on the phone, whatever, but we're not going to solve this going back and forth right now. I'd like further clarification.
So let me get this correct. This board is considering telling me as a water operator going against my training to dewater mains. Is that correct? You guys are considering this?
I'm saying no, it's something that we don't do. This is Brad speaking. Okay. I don't think we do it at all. If you want a motion to that effect, we can make a vote on that. But what I thought was a definite no when you brought this up, John, was a definite no, and it seems to be wavering there. So it's frowned upon. So I really, in my opinion, I think it's something we don't do. That's me personally, but okay. With my understanding of the system.
Well, so the only reason I brought it up, and apparently I struck a nerve here, and but this could happen again, and whether John likes it or I like it and he doesn't like it, or whoever likes it, when it happens, somebody's got to know what to do and other than obviously trying to get the water flowing and getting the power back on, but these are types of things that happen. So I think that we ought to get a final ruling from whoever makes the decision on what to do.
It's me that makes the decision.
Well, no, I don't think so. I don't think it is. And I think that you have to agree when you're standing there that the decision needs to be made for you. It needs to be something that is followed in accordance to, if this happens, what are we going to do? And I don't think you want that decision squarely.
I don't think.
And I can tell you, I don't want it on.
This is Dylan Chase.
I do think the decision to shut off water is the decision of the superintendent of the water company. I don't think it's a town decision on that part, but.
Oh, I didn't say it was a town decision. I'm not sure whose decision it is, but I don't think anybody wants that decision squarely resting on their shoulders.
That's my job every day, Peter, is making decisions for the health and public safety of the Block Island Water Company. That's what I do every day.
But do you make decisions when crap is flowing in the street and people
that's Dylan's job.
John, people die from plagues. And that's where plagues start from. So I'm not being a drama queen, but all I'm saying is that's where they come from.
Is this a
Sewer breeds unbelievable amounts of bacteria. And the last time I was there, people were walking through it, and that's not what we want to happen again. Well, then, if you remember, obviously it did have an impact. Well, it had an impact on me. And it had a real big impact on DEM and the health department then, because they had an awful lot to say about that overflow.
One of the biggest things about that overflow is that there wasn't chlorinated straw put down around that's what they were really upset about. There wasn't any chlorinated wattle or anything around the storm drain. That's what they really got upset about.
Yeah, well,
we were washing it down, and that was something that that was the major point taken out of that, was chlorinated straw should have been put in, or some filter fabric.
If I'm not mistaken, during that crisis, they did not suggest dewatering the system.
Not during that one. I believe, Dylan, aren't you required to have a plan for this? Doesn't DEM require this? And by your
okay, I'll speak on this. This is Dylan Chase. So we do have a plan for our emergency response plan. The response plan is ever evolving, and it is not perfect, and nor does it take in all circumstances. I do believe there needs to be, first of all, to Pete's initial point, there has been major upgrades to the pump stations, ever increasing redundancy for the pump stations. There's been ever increasing redundancy to the pump stations, including extra high level alarms. SCADA will be integrated, so we'll have more visibility there with the resiliency project. There already are generator backup hookups, and all members of the staff are trained on hooking those up. We have coordinated emergency response in that regard significantly since I've taken over in the last year. However, there does need to be more training, as to Pete's point. That is the Achilles heel of the main streets. There is no visibility on the manholes. There's no visibility in the collection system beyond the pump stations. So that is a weak point, and we do need to look at that. And I think that for my own consideration, I need to focus on some high-level training there and visible training there, whether I need to incorporate the all-town crews in that, the fire department or the town road crew, the police department, in the water company. I think it's a discussion that we need to have. This is obviously very important. I was not there for this, for that overflow. However, I have been involved in a couple of them, and the immediacy of the event is very clear. It is ever critical to maintain and make sure that wastewater doesn't go into our ponds, and I think everybody's on board there, and everybody agrees what the best solution is. I think we do need to discuss this further. What concerns me about shutting off the water after my discussions with John is the visibility aspect. Now we would be dealing with not only a wastewater into the ponds, but also a boil water event, which may trigger more visibility from the news media and the like. So I don't know if that's a step we want to take, at least until a very last resort. Also, John makes a good point with the fact that, even shutting off the water mains, there's still a number of wells on the system, and depending on the time of year, that could be a considerable flow as well, which may not stop it. I think we need to really look at our vulnerabilities, and I need to really make a list and make a presentation to what those are, and work with the commissioners and the water company to that effect. I do believe this is something important, and that we need to really take a critical look at this and exercise, put all options on the table and how they would affect the overall health of the public, and what is the best, the pros and cons of every scenario, and what's in the best interest of the community.
We actually use the we use the fire hydrant to wash some of the sewage and dilute it off.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did.
No, we didn't. No, we washed it with a fire truck. No fire hydrant. And we didn't use that much water, and we overestimated the spill amount, and because there was, in my opinion, there's no way that 5,000 gallons went through there, but we felt it better to be overestimate how much happened, and the pond ended up being closed for I think 3 days, because it takes 3 days to flush the entire salt pond out, even though the harbor is open, and to change the water. So the shellfishing was shut for 3 days, and in an abundance of caution, even though the billions of gallons that are in there and the estimated 5,000 gallons of sewage, that was what they required us to do, required the town to do. And so, yeah, I get what everybody's saying, but there needs to be something that, a rule that is followed if this happens again. That was my only point. And if John wants to make the decision on exactly what happens if there is a sewer overflow, then he needs to be given the authority to make those decisions. That's all I'm saying. If John wants to make the decisions, then he should make them.
I have the authority to make the decision.
Okay, this is Brad again, and I think he already has that decision-making power. Do you not, John?
No,
maybe that's a question for David.
He doesn't have any authority in terms of sewer. He has authority in terms of water. But if he wants the authority in terms of sewer,
Which would it directly affect?
If the Department of Health wants to give him that authority, or the DEM does, because of the effects, then I have no problem with it. So, I'd like to go. I'd like to look at it a little further, and if nobody else wants to do it, I will, and get some answers as to a course of action. And I'll go with what Brad said earlier. We'll table it for the time being, and we'll look at it a little farther, and try to get to some kind of ruling on this, because it could happen again. It's not likely, but it's possible.
This comes with some sort of cream that you're supposed to put on.
Sandra, could you say that again? I
think
could not hear you.
She thought she was muted, Brad, I think.
I would like to say, to Pete's point about looking into it, I would like to do some more research as well. I have done a little bit about what we have here, but I'd like to research more about what, the expectations are per, the Department of Health, or to DEM, shellfish, and all of those things considered. I would like to do some more research as well.
I'd like to get Jim Jeremiah's opinion on this too, please.
We can look into that. Yep.
That's what I was going to say. We have engineers who have errors and omissions, engineers who are far, I hate to say this, I don't want to make it sound like smarter, and have dealt with these kinds of situations, and they are the people who should be putting these protocols in place. And then it's our sewer superintendent, water superintendents that say yay or nay.
Okay, back to the original motion, then I make a motion that we table this for further discussion, pending further information being determined.
Second.
Sounds
Thank you, Tom.
Second.
All those in favor, Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabo,
Aye.
Tom Doyle,
Aye.
Brad Martins,
Aye.
and Pete McNerney.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, here we go.
Item 8.
Number 8, discussion of potential action regarding Champlain's Marina Pump Station and possible written agreement pertaining to usage and backup generator owned by Champlain's Marina. Dylan?
I'll defer it over to David and see what he has to say on that.
So David here, I tried to rekindle, you could say, the lack of communication we had from Mr. Goldberg previously, leading up to the COVID crisis. I have not yet got a response, but partially I imagine that has to do with what most attorneys are experiencing, this new balance of remote working and not at the office and whatnot. So I'm willing to give a pass on this. I know everyone is very anxious to kind of get this settled. What I would say is, if there were a problem tomorrow and we needed to get to that pump station, we have all legal right and authority to do whatever it is we need to do. Whether there is a written easement in place or not, we have our rights as a sovereign, along with the actual plans of what's been in place and put in place over the years. So I will continue to try not to be a telemarketer per se, but something close to it, to try to put this issue to bed, as it were. So unfortunately, nothing substantive at the moment.
Any further comments on that, Dylan?
I would like to know, I would like to see, our sovereign, I guess, authority on that. Is there anything legal we could turn to as far as, something in our back pocket, if in the case we ever needed it, David?
Yeah, so the doctrine, along with, again, just general police powers given to us as a municipal corporation and your enabling legislation, you have what's known as an implied easement and an easement by necessity for the pump station and all the infrastructure leading to it and around it that is owned by the sewer authority or sewer district in this case. That's very well established, from a nationwide perspective, and it's no different under Rhode Island case law in that regard. So again, if we need to act, we have full authority to act to protect the sewer system and our equipment and anything related to it. It's kind of a bare bones, whatever it is we need to do from a necessity standpoint, we are covered. Anything beyond that from, that, isn't, we'll call it necessary. That's where it starts getting, a little bit grayer, and why you want to have a clearly delineated easement, as was contemplated at the time everything was installed. For those who weren't necessarily on the board at the time, just for a bit of history, that I say the time that we started to rekindle this discussion, apparently when the installation went in, while there was much back and forth with lots of lawyers and engineers as to what the easement and the pump station were going to entail, the final document, whether it was ever signed or not, is lost to town records. I have my doubts, but whether it was signed or not, it appears that it should have been, based on the correspondence we were able to find within the wastewater facility in an old filing cabinet. But again, the final document that would have been recorded in land evidence does not exist. But every plan and whatnot since the concept of installation and since clearly delineates what that easement is. and obviously that it's owned by the district, and on and on and on. So it's just a matter of, to use an analogy used earlier, belt, suspenders, and maybe nuclear radiation suit at play here.
Yeah, but the whole this Pete McNerney. So the whole idea behind originally is that Joe offered, if we ever lost power down there for whatever reason, he offered to hook his generator or his power system, if you will, to that pump station, so we would have belt, suspenders, and so forth and so on, because when the sewer is pumping in there at and Dylan can correct me if I'm wrong or I overstate this, but when that thing is at full capacity at that harbor, we have extremely limited time to rectify the situation down there before sewage is flowing overboard. And
that is true.
I don't know how many minutes. I guess it depends on the flow, but it could be as little as 15 or 20 minutes. So Joe offered that, and that's how we got to this, that we have no easement, we have no this, we have no agreement in order to have that happen. And the days of handshake deals are certainly way past. That's how we got to that. And so the fact that Mr. Goldberg is not answering, so forth and so on, jeepers, I don't know. I mean, we've been looking at this now literally for years now.
Do we need to pay him to get him
No.
to answer the phone? I mean,
I don't know what we need to do. But I mean, I've talked to Joe on this personally, not recently, but probably last year. He's like, look, we'll do this thing that you want us to do, and da 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 da. And I've been there. I mean, I talked to him with Chris and so forth.
Sure.
I mean, I believe the man works for Joe Grillo. Mr. Goldberg works for Mr. Grillo, and I don't understand why this is being, quite frankly, so difficult. But it seems to be like an act of Congress, and I don't get it.
I mean, I don't want to speculate. Everyone's attorney-client relationship is unique, is what I'll say, just from my own experience. And I don't want to disparage anyone. That's not my intention here. From what I understand, everybody is on the same page. In fact, the electrical backup, the standby generator that was installed, I believe it'll be a year ago next month. So it's actually already set to go. And that's, at the time when when that installation even was being contemplated and then was taking place, everybody was on the same page. Install it. We'll, figure out what the title issue is, if there is any, and just if something happens in the meanwhile, it's going to kick on just automatically. No one has to give a second thought. My understanding is that's still the case. And I don't want to get into, we could, force them to cause us to hook up. That's not what I was just implying in terms of implied easement or easement by necessity. That's completely optional, so to speak. And they've been very gracious in that regard. And we just got to, get it in writing, so to speak. And it's, again, I don't want to speculate. It's something we're working towards, and I will continue to, try to make happen.
Thanks, David.
Okay.
So do we actually need this is Brad. Do we actually need a motion on that, or do we just continue it as you're suggesting, Dave?
Just continue it. I believe we had, prior to COVID, we were trying to keep it on every month's agenda just as a placeholder. And so I would say let's continue doing that now that we're back to some sort of normalcy. So no motion necessary.
And Dylan, is that the case? Is that in fact the case that if there were a problem, it would automatically switch over at this time anyway?
That is correct.
Okay, let's table it for future discussion until we find out more then. Or that's my motion, I apologize.
I agree. Discussion on potential action regarding wastewater COVID-19 testing. Dylan?
Yes. Okay, so since the beginning of May, I have been testing the wastewater coming into the plant. That's the raw influent for COVID-19. You will see all the backup documents. I've been testing. I think I tested about 3 weeks out of May and then 1 week out of June, which is still yet to arrive. They're very slow on their results. There's been a lot of backup, and actually some of their workers had tested positive. But so far, so good. We've tested negative for COVID-19 thus far. So I hope it remains that way. I have put in an order for biweekly testing for the next 6 months. And I did get 2 free kits to carry us through July. So I've been utilizing that every few weeks, and I will continue to do so and keep you guys updated as to any results that I get.
Awesome. I'd just like to say that I'm an advocate to keep this testing going. I think it's just another tool in the box to keep everybody informed as to what's going on Block Island. And I think it's a pretty valuable resource to the town. All right. I guess discussion potential action regarding sewer financials and aging.
All right. So for the month of May, we billed about 51% less gallons than we did the prior year. Just as a comparison, our total revenues as of 5/31 were at 80.4% compared to 89% of budgeted where we were last year. And let's see here. I think as Pete said, like I'm feeling optimistic, judging by the amount of people that I saw this last weekend. I'm hoping that we don't have the revenue reductions that we were anticipating. Looking at the financials, we're getting to our year end. Does anyone have any questions about the numbers they see? Anyone want to move on to aging?
We know I always like to
I
look.
think the numbers look pretty much where we expect it to be.
Yeah. Sandra?
There are two accounts in particular that are at double digit.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't understand why. How do we continue to let this happen? I mean, it's gone beyond where it's ever been.
We have
Right, and how do we?
7.
Go.
There's 7
Yeah,
of
and
them.
usually our tax sale cleans all of this up.
Okay. Which is when?
That was originally planned for July, and then it was decided that it would be postponed. And I'm sure that the commission, correct me if I'm wrong, David, can the commission just choose another date for that, or does it have to be in July or, a certain month?
How do you have a tax sale for the last customer on the list?
I'll have to look at what the list is, as far as that
he
specific
does
question.
not.
But
He's one of our septic haulers. He does not. Yeah, he's not included in the tax sale. He always ends up catching up.
I've been, like I was gone for a bit, but I don't ever recall it being this high unless I'm wrong.
so to the tax sale question, administratively that can be done at any time. There's no restriction to having it in July. That ended up being a matter of convenience, and the way we have done it the past few years, the idea was to we'll say compel compliance by making sure that first ad ends up being in the Block Island Times on 4th of July weekend. That would get the most visibility. and therefore we'll call it the highest incentive to avoid. But we could hold it, virtually at any time that's convenient for finance and myself to hold. Certain times of the year are more stressful than others in that office, and I try to not impose the various strictures we have to follow. But essentially, as long as, it's essentially about call it 100-day turnaround. You need the first notice has to be out 90 days prior to the tax sale. And given how, well-oiled a machine this finance department is in my relationship with them, I need 10 days ahead of when that notice is going to go out to get it all together, and it starts the process. So I believe we were shooting for an early fall, kind of early to mid fall as the postponement date, but nothing's been decided on that yet.
Right. What's the?
Yeah, and it really depends on what the commission feels comfortable with, right?
But don't you think in the fall, it's when people might not have the money to pay these? They're left doing something in the summer when the revenue's coming in?
Well, again, that's traditionally how we've done it. It was essentially the COVID crisis that, from a statewide perspective, the collections aspect of it, including tax sales, was essentially put to an end or put on hold, I should say, during that time. And of course, that inconvenienced our timeline. What I can say is if they don't have the ability to pay, while I'm not an advocate for anyone, losing their home or business or anything, especially to a sewer tax or a water district charge, the idea is someone will pay. Someone always goes to these, we'll call the auctions, the actual tax sale, and then the owner, the property owner, still has 1 year to redeem it. Now, of course, the longer it goes on, the more fees and charges get tacked on, and that includes post the sale for whoever the new holder is. I think it would be highly unlikely that anything would fall, let's say, to the district to take, and we wouldn't receive money. I think the district itself will get paid regardless. And again, the finance department has the ability, in whatever custom circumstance may arise, unique circumstance, to pull any property that needs to be pulled for whatever circumstance. Again, maybe they enter into a payment plan. Who knows what it is? But it's not once they reach the sale, they lose the property forever. That's not how it works.
Is there any chance of, like, I'm sure you don't know this yet, Mona, but you might have an idea of, I see we have, like, for instance, $190,000 variance in user fees, but we closed isn't our year end June 30th?
Yes, but the user fees that you see there, the total, that's not what we've collected. That's what's been billed.
No, I understand that, but I'm looking at the variance.
Right. So I'm just saying that collecting what is owed past due from these people isn't going to affect that.
No, I know that.
Okay.
I've already resigned myself, and I'm moving past that.
Okay.
What are the chances of getting any of that, or recouping any of that variance for June?
Like I said, I think I'm feeling optimistic about what we expect for June. I don't think we'll see 100% of what we got last year.
Right.
I'm not able to access the numbers online right now, but I would almost feel like we could shoot for a 70% of what we got last year, but I really don't know. It's so uncertain.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It was unfair, really.
And again, our numbers, our budgeted numbers, we're all based on the prior year's flows, and that's just how we budget the revenue. So it moves so much.
Right. All right. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, anyone else?
I guess we got sewer operations.
I'm good.
Okay. So as far as May, again, we complied with all parameters of our RIPD's permit. You can see from the graph, we had a significant less flow come in as far as our total monthly flows. Not too much to report on the facility and collection system beyond that. The grit door clone apex valve rebuild was successful, and that saved us approximately $30,000 doing that in-house. So I was very happy with that, and everything's been running great since we rebuilt that. Customers were billed for 1.8 or so gallons of waste treated in May. That was a 50.525 decrease from May 2019. So that is significant. Our second quarter bioassay was shipped and all lab equipment was calibrated and certification completed by Alert Scientific. I already touched on COVID-19. Inflow and infiltration was at 60.22% greater than our total gallons filled. That is all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Very good.
Nope. Excellent. Brad, you're up. Brad? Uh-oh.
Brad, we can't hear you.
You still, you can't hear me?
I can hear you now.
Hold on. Okay. Hold on one second. Something disappeared on my screen here. So,
I hate when that happens.
I apologize. Hold on. I'm having a few computer issues right now myself. Hold on.
Technical difficulties?
Come on.
The reserve policy, bro.
Technical difficulties. Yes, hold on. Oh my God. Oh, hold on. Okay. Here we go. Okay, moving on to the water district, if you can still hear me. We're going to discuss some potential action regarding the water district reserve policy. Mona?
All right. Yep. So, okay, 1 second. Let's just get back to my notes here. All right. So 2 years ago, May 2018, the water company voted to increase the target levels of the capital replacement reserve by 5% in preparation for the water main replacement project. At the end of fiscal year 2019, the water company was at 84% of their target reserve level at reserves of 812,453. And like the sewer commission, the commission will need to draw from reserves. The water company will need to draw from reserves more than what was expected or budgeted for fiscal year 20 due to the third quarter revenues. And based on the budget that they just adopted, they will require an additional $240,333 from reserves to fund the operating and capital budgets of fiscal year 21. So with those two impacts that we're looking at in the future, at the end of fiscal year 21, is the water company will be at approximately 56% of their target reserve. So not quite as healthy as the, as the sewer, but I'm hoping that that can be replenished as going forward. We're going to have to continue to do some rate increases, I suppose. So,
I mean, that's what we've got to do with regards to because of what's going on with COVID. We'll hope that we're out of this by the end of this year. We've got a lot of companies a lot of major commercial accounts that have come online late. So that's and not including rentals and everything else, which I understand actually increasing right now as far as home rentals, which hopefully is an increase there as well. But I think that's what we're looking at, similar to sewer.
Yeah.
So we need I'll make a motion that we move forward with the suggested reserve policy changes for the water district for the coming fiscal year.
Do you have a second?
Second that.
All right, all in favor, Tom Doyle,
Aye.
Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabo,
Aye.
Pete McNerney,
Aye.
Brad Martins.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, item 13, discussion potential action regarding the approval of the service truck purchase in the amount of $42,000 to be financed in term not to exceed 5 years or 60 months, and the interest rate not to exceed 8%. My understanding that we've got an interest rate substantially below that. Where does that stand right now?
That we got an interest rate below that?
Well, I know what I mean is interest rates are substantially below 6% right now, if not almost interest free.
That was the interest rate offered. You know, my initial, gut feeling that it was a bit high considering, I think it might be because we're getting this through the commercial, we're going through the commercial channel. So I'd imagine that's why. We're also getting the truck at a very reduced rate on the fleet price, which is, I think, 8,000 to 10,000 lower than, let's say, MSRP. So that's what was offered through Ford. So the interest isn't that much at the end of the day for 5 years at that amount. It doesn't amount to too much interest.
Do we need a motion to accept that?
So we need a motion to accept it.
Yes, I need a motion to accept that so I can move along with the application, yes.
I make a motion that we accept the deal as presented in the agenda.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Tom Doyle,
Aye.
Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabo,
Aye.
Pete McNerney,
Aye.
Brad Martins,
I'll vote aye with the condition that we try and hard boil them and getting a rate below that, since it should be easily available.
Yeah, I agree.
motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 14, discussion potential action regarding water financials and aging. The aging looks very similar to the sewer as expected, but any other questions from anyone?
We were down 50% as far as the gallons billed for this month compared to last.
I'll make a motion.
50%.
Not unexpected right now. Hopefully this month will be a little bit different. So I'll make a motion that we approve them. Do we have to make a motion on this?
No.
No.
I didn't think so.
Mona, did you have anything else?
Item 15, water operation.
In the light of being kind of quick, if you guys have any questions, that's fine. We had an interesting staffing plan in May. We're trying to get back to some normalcy is kind of the heart of it. So we're trying to get back to normal staffing at this point. If you guys have any questions, you know. Oh, one more thing, our bonding authority will be, now that the town financial meeting has been lifted, all that the governor lifted, all those things, we will have, whatever the town decides to do, we will be agenda for the financial meeting. floor to hear those questions for bonding authority. I just wanted to get that in. Other than that, if you guys don't have any questions, I'll move on.
Any questions? This is Brad.
And
Okay, moving on to item 6.
in the light of optimism, check out my graph. This is up to date to today. I just, everyone's feeling optimistic. There's reason for that. You can look at my graph in there. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, John. Item 16, New Shoreham Sewer Commission, or New Shoreham Water Commission, I'm sorry, may vote to move into executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A, subsection 2, regarding potential litigation concerning the incident on Lot 89 on the New Shoreham Tax Assessor's Plat 6. Is there a need for that?
Yes.
Yes. We need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive
Okay,
session.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor, Tom Doyle,
Aye.
Steve Draper,
Aye.
Kathy Zabel,
Aye.
Pete McNerney,
Aye.
and Brad. Motion carries.
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Motion carries.
So are we already in closed session because there's no one here from the public? We're good.
Yeah, there's no one here to put in the waiting room, so we
Right.
did it.
Do we need
So-
to stop recording?
We do need to stop the recording and the live stream.
1 second, guys.